Everyone, we're going to talk about athlete monitoring, HRV readiness, surveys, and etc. Essentially, what we kind of want to cover today is how to assess athletes with and without their permission. That is to say that sometimes we're just going to ask them point blank how they're doing, and other times we're going to incorporate some science and uncover how their body's doing in ways that they may not even be aware. So it's our goal is to figure out how to see how they're doing so that we can change our plans to best suit them so that they can perform optimally, right? And when it comes to athlete monitoring, really the big game in town would be wearable player monitoring vests. Several different companies provide them, and some of the factors that you might discover or measure with them would be total distance covered. So even though the athletes are running zigzag patterns around a field all game or all practice, you're able to accrue their total distance covered, their average running speed, sprinting distance, average acceleration time, deceleration time, their heart rate, positioning on the field. So you can even incorporate some tactical aspects as far as coaching side. So that's a good way to sort of get buy-in from some coaches who maybe the coach just wants them to run the 1 mile or the 2 mile, and that's their fitness test. Well, bringing this in, you may be able to build the importance of a product like this by discussing how you can play back their positions on the field. So if they have a player who isn't doing what they want them to do tactically, right there, then they have some more data that they can back up more from a coaching aspect than a fitness perspective. Time of high and low intensity play, and the athlete's overall load, as in the demand on the body, and then G-force and impact data, which is very useful for impact sports such as rugby or football. So you get a little bit of everything out of them, and they're just a product, and they may not have an impact right away, day one, week one, month one. But if our teams start wearing these over and over again, over the course of a year, over the course of multiple years, the data that you have will really allow you to start making some changes. So even though you might have a game plan, maybe you're coaching and every year you like to do this fitness test at this point, and then you do this series of drills for leading into the preseason, this, that, and the other. Well, if you have a team that goes out and does really well, you can go back and you can look at your data points and you can fight to try and get those data points up again. Or if you have a team that was supposedly fit or cardiovascularly in excellent shape, but you start having lots of ACL tears, or you just didn't have a successful season, the data that you have to rely on and to go back to will really give you a lot of insight. And also, just looking at if an athlete has, if their heart rate is higher than average on a given day, or if their decelerations take longer than normal, or if their accelerations take longer than normal, or if their top running speed is slower than normal, some things like that can give you basically red flags of things to step in right away and maybe give them some time off and really back them off so that body can recover a little bit. All right, let's spend a little bit of time on this graphic. Let's talk about heart rate variability. As you can see in the upper left there, heart rate variability is the measure of variance in time intervals between successive heartbeats, i.e. cardiac cycles. And what you're doing is you're not measuring the beats per minute. You're measuring the electrical activity within individual beats and the distance between the end of one beat to the start of another. And what's happening there is that the chambers of the heart coordinate in different ways when they're stressed versus when they're not stressed. And a less stressed individual will have more heart rate variability. So high heart rate variability is good. That means that our body is working in reflection of demands and of acute stressors versus being so overworked and so overstressed that it's just doing the same thing over and over again, which would be low heart rate variability, which is an indicator of exhaustion, overtraining, high levels of stress, etc. Moving down to the use of HRV to monitor athlete training stress. HRV is a valid and reliable predictor of the autonomic nervous system function, which controls the sympathetic parasympathetic balance of the body. This balance is altered by the response and stress to training. HRV could potentially be used to understand the training adaptation and maladaptation in response to training stress. Okay, when our HRV dips low, it means we're stressed out, and we can directly, with our practices, with our training, we can directly back off and try to influence that HRV to rise. And why do we want to do that? Because it is a reflection of the ANS. And we're going to talk more about that ANS over the next couple of slides here. A few factors that impact HRV include your activity, drugs, alcohol, age, genetics, stress levels, and ethnicity. And as you can see on the right there, how HRV works. Stress reduces and lowers your HRV, and recovery raises your HRV. All right, I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide because we're going to see this slide again on our recovery lecture, and we're going to kind of abuse it and spend more time on it. So I'm just going to really quickly say that there's test options for that HRV. There's different ways to measure it. Higher quality readouts would include something like HRV, the Omega Wave, which includes conductors, software, and hardware. Or you could do something simple like a vertical jump, a tap test, which would be seeing how many times a finger can tap a screen in a window of 5 to 10 seconds. Doing a grip strength like a dynamometer, or if you don't have a dynamometer, you could do a handshake, which is pretty old school, but probably works a little bit. It's probably still fairly reliable. Or you could do a bar hang. You think about when the athlete is rested, their HRV is high. They're probably gonna be able to hang from a bar a little bit longer than normal. Now, if I have athletes who are hanging from the bar for multiple minutes at a time, I'm probably not going to do that because it's probably going to cause stress. So if I have athletes who are only hanging from that bar for 20 to 40 seconds, I might keep that in the wheelhouse a little bit more. But if I have athletes who are sitting in there for over 2 minutes, I'm probably going to find something else to do. And then finally, to do a mood survey or just observation. Look at them. How's their body language? Are they joking around with their teammates, or are they off in the corner texting on their phone? Just giving them simple surveys to fill out, which we're going to talk about more today. And yeah, any kind of observation, body language, energy levels, performance. Are they hitting their sets and reps, but are they grinding them out while everybody else on the team is hitting smooth, clean reps? Just little things like that. Okay, so homeostasis is that dynamic balance between the two autonomic branches of parasympathetic and sympathetic. And where do we really want to be? Well, a healthy individual really wants to be kind of right in the middle. And what that allows them to do is to be ready to respond appropriately to stimulus in the environment. And when something stressful comes along, we can rise to the occasion and we can fight or flight and become a little bit more sympathetic. And when there's no need for that, we can sort of drift into more of a parasympathetic state, and we're able to rest and digest. We're sleeping well. We're processing foods well. The stress levels are low. So again, with fatigue monitoring, parallel subject matter to HRV, in many conversations, it would be essentially the same thing. But as we dive in here, we'll see that it's not exactly the same thing. What is fatigue? It's a exercise or non-exercise induced total performance due to various physiological factors, athlete-reported psychological factors, or a combination of the two. And the two categories that we're looking at for the fatigue is typically going to be central or peripheral. Central being more of like, think about your central nervous system, in that CNS is fried, your HRV is kind of, your HRV is really low. We don't have much difference in our heartbeats or that window between heartbeats. And then peripheral would be more like sore muscles, blisters on your feet, more short-term, simple to observe and simple to fix issues. And then really, I think we can skip ahead to how to monitor. And let's look at subjectively, how would we monitor? Wellness questionnaires, rating of a fatigue scale. And the science is there that even though this seems like such a plan B or so secondary to maybe having more expensive gizmos that you can attach to an athlete's body, the science is there to say that the surveys actually align with the subjective measurements, actually align with the objective measurements pretty well. So the science is there to say that if you don't have an omega wave machine, or you're not taking spit samples and analyzing them and things like that, just asking athletes for honest feedback on how they're doing actually has value. And objectively, you can measure it through counter movement jumps, HRV, salivary measures. And then probably ideally you would have a combination of the two. All right, KISS, if you're not familiar with KISS, it's a rock band. It's also an acronym for Keep It Super Simple. Again, if you don't have the nice, big, fancy pieces of equipment to tell you how ready your athletes are, keep it super simple. Use a survey. Some areas to investigate would be fatigue monitoring, their self-care habits, sleep, nutrition, mindset, other, and then finally, the most simple of all, just asking about their readiness. A question such as, how excited are you to compete today? How energized are you for today's practice or today's training session? Something that simple was going to give you data that may align really, really accurately with an expensive piece of equipment such as the Omega Wave. Not to mention, I wouldn't say anything like this to the athletes, but if you have an athlete who, if it's a 1 out of 10 question and 10 is feeling really good, and they're kind of feeling like a 6, if they say, "Oh, I don't want to admit I feel like a 6," I'm gonna put down 8. I'm feeling all right today. I'm doing 8. While that might just be giving the coach and the survey poor information, I like to think that just a small part of them will be subject to the self-fulfilling prophecy, and that by putting down an 8 instead of a 6, they'll actually start to feel a little bit better and they'll perform a little bit higher. Because I'm just a believer in that mental aspect of the self-fulfilling prophecy. Sometimes I liken it to when I'm lifting weights and I'm writing it down in my little lifting journal. If I've got a big set coming up, sometimes what I'll do is I'll write down that I did that certain weight that I'm a little nervous about. I'll write it down that I did it before I actually hit the set. And that way I kind of feel like when I go into the set, that I've already done it. I feel like it's mine for the taking and I just have to execute. So when I've surveyed athletes before, I don't encourage that at all. In fact, I discourage it. I tell them I really want to know how you're feeling. But a part of me always feels like if they give me a little bit of that, if they updraft a little bit, part of me feels like that might influence their performance and their energy levels a little bit for that day. Could be totally off base, but that's just kind of a hunch of mine. Okay, let's go over some possible questions. And again, what I've done on this slide is I've mixed up the type of questions. But what I would do on a certain survey is I would try to keep it a little bit more consistent for easy grading. If you're going to use it on some type of percentage-based scaling to actually use for mitigating and adjusting a training on a given day. So for recovery, and these are the 4 big areas that I would really dive into: recovery, training, stress management, nutrition. For recovery, how many hours of sleep did you get in the last 24 hours? Yes, I prefer a big, juicy, like 9-hour sleep window at night. But if I have an athlete get 5 hours of sleep at night and then take a 4-hour nap later that day, I'm still really happy about that. I'm still going to give that a good score. But ideally, I like the idea of a bigger window of sleep in the nighttime. But sometimes it's just not going to happen. Or if they get 7 hours of sleep and then a 2-hour nap, that's great too. And that opens up the conversation for the importance of napping and the importance of sleep. So I say you measure what you treasure. And if you're not talking about sleep regularly, then you have questions about sleep on your survey, then it helps us remember to actually talk about it. Scale of 1 to 10, how was the quality of sleep in the last 24 hours? So maybe the athlete got a big night of sleep, but they still woke up feeling not very good, not feeling rested. That's a good indicator that they're either way behind on sleep, or when they're sleeping, they're not sleeping well. And if someone needs a lot of sleep and they're always tired, you might be looking at something psychological like depression, or it might just be physiological like sleep apnea. Either way, they might be something to pursue to help them with their health and their performance. You could have them grade their own sleep environment, like somebody who sleeps on their buddy in their, I don't know, somebody who sleeps in their car gets an F. Somebody who sleeps on their buddy's couch at night gets a D. And somebody who sleeps in their own bed, and they've got a cool room, they've got a dark room, they've got a quiet room, they get an A, something like that. Training. Now you kind of want to be careful with this because you ask, how much additional training have you done on your own in the past week? Well, that might be a good question to ask, and it might be a bad question to ask, because somebody might be doing all the training that the team is doing, and they don't have time or energy for extra training. And then you ask a question like that, and you kind of make them feel bad. Or someone might think, oh, coach asked that question, that must mean that more is more. And then you have someone who starts to do 10 extra hours of working out and training every week. And then it's like week three of the season, and they're burnt out. So that's kind of a risky question to ask. You may want to not associate it with more being better. You might want to make a note that more is not more. I just want to know. Scale of 1 to 10, how hard are you working at training in the past week? So Big group in the weight room, somebody's always going to kind of do the bare minimum. You want to try and find out who they are, or if you see who they are and you see that they're putting a 10 on their survey every week, they think that they think they're the hardest working person in that room. Then you have something to go talk to them about. Hey, I see that you think you're crushing it, but me and the other coaches been watching you, and we think that you've got a little bit more. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you feel like you're the hardest working person in the room? And you have a conversation there. Stress management. Scale 1 to 10, how stressed have you felt in the last 72 hours? Okay, if you're asking this question once or twice a week, this is a good one to really see outliers and to see red flags that pop up. This might be the question that leads you to taking an athlete over to a mental health professional instead of working out that day. This might be the one where you're calling the coach after the lift to talk about that athlete, and you're going to impact what's going on with them. This might be the one where you find out that you're the first person to find out about a grandparent dying or about a boyfriend or girlfriend breaking up with them. That's a big question. So grade yourself on the use of positive stress management techniques in the last 72 hours. So again, you as coaches, oftentimes we get caught up talking about so many other things, but one of the most important things we can talk about is positive stress management techniques. Talk about stretching, talk about meditation, talk about doing things to do self-care, because it's these things that are going to help them recover. They're going to help them stay positive, and most of all, it may help them prevent them from sliding into some depression or anxiety. Nutrition, asking them about how much alcohol they're drinking. Some coaches get put into the position where they're the judge, jury, and executioner. If you're going to punish them based on their answers, you probably shouldn't even ask them, because then they're just going to lie to you. Or if they're not lying to you and they know they're going to get punished, that's something else to worry about. So if you're in a position where you're just asking out of curiosity and the information does not automatically become public knowledge to help them get in trouble or anything like that, if you're just asking to ask them, then you probably get a real answer, and you can actually probably help diminish their alcohol intake, because you can have honest conversations and you can just encourage them instead of chastising them about alcohol intake. How many servings of vegetables with the E missing are you eating on average per day over last week? So again, helps us get an idea of how healthy they're eating, but also helps serve as a reminder, oh, I'm only eating those vegetables like once or twice a day. Maybe I need to kick that up a little bit. And then how many grams of protein are you eating on average per day over last week? With another typo there, guys. Sorry about that. Again, there may not be a perfect answer there, but if you're dealing with an athlete who's looking to gain or lose weight, or they have strength goals in the weight room, some of these questions are just great ways of bringing it back full circle to some of their bigger goals. And finally, grade yourself on if your eating is aligned with your body composition goals over the last week. So if someone's looking to lose weight, whether it's a wrestler or it's just any athlete on the team, if they want to lose some weight, and if they look back at that and they've realized that they've had dessert a few too many times over the past week, it just helps open up the conversation. Okay, based on your scores, sometimes you're going to want to make adjustments with training. Sometimes that adjustment happens on the fly right there that very day. Sometimes it's more of a phase-to-phase site type of adjustment. But some adjustments you may look into are reduced training percentage. So on a given day, if I'm using a survey and I grade the survey really quick, like maybe 2 out of 10 or out of 20 or out of 100, and I just create a percentage. So if I get like a 16 out of 20, what's that? 16 out of 20 is 80%. So if I have 80%, maybe for all the weights that I have assigned that day, I have them reduce it by 20%. So they do 80% of all the weights that I assigned because their self-care and their readiness is lower than ideal. It's a possible approach that you can take. Reduce training volume. So one thing that I'll do is I'll say, if you're feeling like an 8 out of 10 or above today, stick with the plan, stick with the program. If you're feeling like a 7 or below, take off your last set on A block, B block, and C block. I might say something like that. Or it might be sort of those same numbers. Hey, if you're feeling good, stick with the program. If you're a little tired today, fight really hard through the first couple blocks, and then we're going to drop that last block. You guys are going to go do some recovery foam rolling instead. And then those people who kind of like were dragging their feet and their heads were down, they kind of say, oh, okay, I don't have to do C block anymore. I can go hard on A block and B block. I'm gonna push a little bit harder. So it kind of helps out a little bit. Sometimes canceling training, depending on how terrible the group or individuals are looking, sometimes canceling training is the way to go. For anyone who's done some personal training, you know that there's those clients that just come in sometimes and you basically get like a slow walk out of them on the treadmill the whole time, and it becomes just a talking therapy session. Not that we're therapists, but sometimes they're in such a state of stress that they're just not going to do anything productive in a safe manner. And for anyone who's ever had a real bad day or a little bit of trauma happen to them on a given day, you know that maybe you go in and you have your best weightlifting session ever because you're just taking it out on the weights, but you also know that sometimes you don't have it, and sometimes it's not safe to be in there lifting heavy weights explosively. Either you or someone near you is going to get hurt. But what about upgrading your training? I like to think that I've got my ears open enough that if an athlete wants to do an extra set, they want to throw in some extra weight, and not just because they're one of those athletes who doesn't trust the weights and thinks that they're stronger every single session. There's a difference between that person who always wants to do more, they always want to max out every day, versus the people who follow the program and trust and follow the highs and lows of the programming. And then on a certain day, they say, hey, this weight is feeling super light. I'm feeling strong today. Can I go up? I mean, there's a difference between that. So if you've got those people who are feeling it, be ready to upgrade their training. And you know what? Maybe our surveys should leave a window open so that they can actually, again, those surveys we're talking about where we might score them out of 10, 20, 100, whatever, maybe we should leave room for them to give themselves higher scores, and then their numbers and their challenges go up automatically. It's just something to think about, not something I've ever done in the past. And again, sometimes our adjustments might mean that we need to intervene either after the lift or immediately with an athletic trainer, a coach, or a mental health professional. Sometimes the athlete comes in and they say, coach, hey, I just hurt my knee at practice. I don't think I can lift today. Is it okay if I go to the athletic trainer? And for me, depending on the situation, most of the time I'm going to say, heck yeah, like get over there and shoot me a text and let me know how it goes. Sometimes I might say, hey, just stick with us and let's do upper body, and you take care of that later. So there's been times where I tell an assistant that I won't be at the lift because I'm taking an athlete over to our mental health professional, is that something more pressing has come up, and we can't lift that day. We've got other things to do. There's more important things that day than a big heavy squat, which pains me to say, but keeping our athletes safe and healthy, sometimes it means getting them into the proper hands of a mental health professional. Okay, we're going to jump over and just talk about some readiness surveys just briefly. We're almost done. Okay, so here's a way that I've done it before in the past. It's not quantifiable to the point that I will automatically change their programming based on it. But what it does is it gives me a little bit of a history over the course of a month of a training cycle. So it's better than nothing. It's not perfect, it's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. And what I'd have them do is they go in, and in each block, they just put like put 1 through 10. Let's see how that looks. Hey, that doesn't look too bad. So sleeping 7 to 10 hours per 24 hours. So if they give me an 8 then I can start to kind of look back and see when they start sliding and doing poorly. And if I have them score everything on a scale of 1 to 10, then it gives me a little bit of an idea and a little bit of a recording basis. So if I have a group of athletes or individual athletes who are constantly giving me low scores, do I need to make their next training, although I like linear programming, do I need to make their next training block bigger and more stressful? Probably not, because if they're not taking care of themselves, they're not going to be able to handle it. So that's one way that I've done it in the past. And another way is simply through Google to do a Google form. And what you can do is you can say test fatigue monitoring form. And you're just going to type in there and you can come up with your questions. Let's shorthand it just so you guys don't have to watch me type poorly. Sleep, we'll say 1 to 10 hours out of last 24. Okay, and then not multiple choice, but we would make it linear, and we make it 1 to 10. All right, so, and then we just go on and we make our next question. And so just simply working our way down there. And then what you do is you send the form out to all the group or the individuals, and they fill it out as frequently as you want them to fill it out, whether it's every 24 hours, 72 hours, or once a week. And that allows us to collect data in a little bit more streamlined way, as opposed to a printout and, kind of a messy handouts and things like that. So those are some ideas on athlete monitoring and how to alter and mitigate training for optimal training and optimal performance. And that's all we got.